Hey there and welcome to my channel. This is Foggy Fiction and I am Haley. I'm a writer living with mental illness, and today I'm going to be talking about why I work with an alpha reader and the tips I have to offer on that note. If you don't know what an alpha reader is, that is basically someone who reads your writing as you are writing it, as opposed to a beta reader who would read it after the draft and/or revisions have been completed. With my current project, I didn't start using an alpha reader until about halfway through, give or take. And it's amazing how much that did for me. It took me almost exactly 2 years to complete my first draft. I think it was 2 years and 2 weeks. The second half was written in less than 6 months, after I had gotten my alpha. To be fair, I had also started therapy either right before or during that time, so I'm not going to discount that either. There are two main reasons for me that stand out as to why I love working with an alpha so much. There is a cat in my sweater now, so if you hear weird bathing noises, it's her. Number one, motivation. Absolutely, without a doubt, this is my number one. As I said, it took me less than 6 months to finish my draft after bringing on an alpha. A draft that I had already put a little more than a year and a half into. Having someone encouraging me and being excited for the next chapter to be written was a major boost to my motivation and in turn my progress. And the other thing is the feedback. Getting that reader feedback on what is or isn't working as I go has been a game changer. Being able to make changes and revisions before I start writing the next chapter, and having my questions answered before I move on and stick to those decisions for the rest of the book, has kept me from a lot of lengthy revisions down the road. While I think these are things that could be helpful to anyone, I will say that the motivation and feedback I received from my alpha really helped push me through the days when my what-if voice was the loudest. Now, with all of that said, I want to offer some tips that I have learned so that your alpha experience, if you choose to have one, will be as awesome as mine. These tips may not be helpful to everyone, but they worked for me, so I'm going to throw them out there. Number one, be picky when choosing your alpha. And what I mean by this covers a few things. You need to make sure that you have someone you can trust to give access to your work, and trust that they won't share it with anyone else, of course. Someone you know well enough that you won't be embarrassed for them to see your work in its draft phase, and who won't ridicule you for the mistakes that you will make. Someone who will be very honest with you about what they do, and especially what they do not like, without being cruel and while still not holding back. I know that one sounds complicated, but it basically means finding someone who's comfortable telling you what they didn't like and why they didn't like it without being a jerk about it. And then also, make sure you're not picking someone who only reads horror to alpha read your romance novel. My alpha is a friend from college who is already familiar with my writing because we met when we were taking writing courses together. I reached out to her because I knew she ticked all those boxes for me and for this draft. Number two, talk with your potential alpha first. I know that seems obvious, but there are things you might not realize you need to talk with them about before bringing them on. I actually had 4 other alphas before the one that I use now, and life happened for all of them, which is completely understandable. So I made the decision to reach out to one more person, and she's been a perfect fit. So much so that I basically told her she has to be the alpha for all of my books that I write from now on. I honestly feel like I should be paying her. With that said, you need to talk to your potential alpha about how much extra time they have to put into this for you, and ask yourself how long you're willing to wait for feedback. When I finish a chapter, I send my alpha a message, and she usually gives me a time frame on when she'll be able to read it, which I think has almost always been within the next 24 hours, if not sooner. And when it's been longer, that's been fine. I am incredibly lucky that she has that kind of time for me. And I don't want you to expect that from every alpha you approach. People have lives, they have jobs, they have families. Almost everyone I know my age has kids. They have their own mental health to think about. And with the world the way that it is right now, you just can't know what is on someone else's plate. So make a list of what you're wanting out of your alpha experience and talk to them about it before you start sending them your writing. Number 3, Google Docs. To put it simple, Google Docs is superb when it comes to feedback. It allows you to invite people to see your document on your terms. I have mine set up to where my alpha can read the document, post comments, see my own comments, and reply to any of the comments on there. But she can't edit my writing, share the document, or invite anyone else to join. The comment feature is extremely simple and easy to use. And another really cool thing is that if we're both viewing the document at the same time, she can see the changes I'm making in real time as I make them. I can also revoke her access at any time. Not that I'm going to need to, but it is a nice failsafe. The downside to Google Docs is that it does not integrate with Scrivener very well, if at all. I have seen a workaround where you can back up your Scrivener file to Dropbox and have that linked to your Google Drive, which Google Docs is a part of, but I haven't tried it and it seems complicated. So if you know how to do that, let me know. Number 4, know that you do not have to make the changes that your alpha suggests. It is your manuscript, your brainchild, your decision. They are there to help and offer insight and feedback, but they are not your boss. You might even add that to your list of things to keep in mind when choosing your alpha. Every comment and suggestion that they leave is meant to help, but they aren't the writer, and you shouldn't feel like you have to make those changes. You know your story best, and you have final decision. With that said, if you're ignoring all of their suggestions, you might want to consider bringing on a different alpha. And if the new alpha gives all the same suggestions, you might consider taking a closer look at those suggestions. And then on the flip side, number 5, you are allowed to change the things your alpha loves. You've heard kill your darlings? Sometimes you have to kill your alpha's darlings too. If your alpha leaves feedback saying that they love a part that you know you're going to have to change for whatever reason, don't feel like you can't change it. Make a note of what they loved about it, and keep that in mind as you continue your story. So if you're considering bringing on an alpha reader, there's my tips for you. I know I've said repeatedly how awesome it's been for me, but it might not be best for you, and that's okay. I would just really sit down and think about it before you consider going forward with an alpha, because this is a very vulnerable place to be in. Even more so than with betas, because at least with betas, depending on when you send it out to them, you know, they're seeing something that is in a more completed space. My alpha has seen an enormous amount of growth from what she first started reading to what I've got now with all of the revisions that we've gone through, because I'm almost done with my first, technically second round of revisions. It is a very, very vulnerable place to be in. Editing Haley here. I just want to drop and say I actually filmed this video sometime in October, and at that point I hadn't finished writing my last draft, but I have, and now my alpha is helping me with the project that I am doing for NaNoWriMo that as of last night I hit 24,000 words, a little over 24,000 words on, so we're going strong. Anyway, let me know if you use an alpha reader and any other tips you might have to offer. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're interested in continuing to watch my very clumsy journey as a writer living with mental illness. Enjoy the happy moments.